What if one of the biggest rivalries in women's basketball wasn't just about competition? What if it had been building for years before either player ever stepped onto a WNBA court? That's exactly why fans are once again debating the relationship between A'ja Wilson and Caitlin Clark. A recently resurfaced podcast clip reignited the conversation, sending social media into a frenzy and causing people to revisit interviews, old comments, and moments that many have forgotten. Supporters believe these incidents reveal a larger pattern, while others argue they have been taken out of context. Either way, the discussion has become impossible to ignore, and it has placed both superstars back in the spotlight. Most fans assume the tension between Wilson and Clark started after Caitlin entered the WNBA. According to the source material, that's not the case. The story stretches back to Clark's college career, long before she became the biggest name in professional women's basketball. As Clark continued breaking scoring records and attracting millions of new viewers to the sport, every interview involving her generated headlines. During that period, Wilson shared opinions that quickly became talking points across basketball media, with many fans believing those comments hinted at frustration over Clark's growing popularity. One of the earliest moments came during an interview discussing Clark's historic college achievements. After Caitlin became the all-time leading scorer in NCAA basketball history, Wilson acknowledged her talent but emphasized that championships matter most, suggesting players need to win a national title before being placed among the greatest college stars. Those remarks immediately sparked debate because many fans compared the very different situations each player experienced during college. Supporters of Clark argued that Iowa and South Carolina were completely different basketball programs. They pointed out that South Carolina consistently recruited elite talent and competed for championships every season, while Iowa relied heavily on Clark's individual brilliance to reach consecutive national title games. Because of that difference, many viewers believed simply comparing championship totals failed to capture the full picture of what Clark accomplished during her collegiate career. The disagreement quickly spread across sports television, podcasts, and social media, becoming one of the first major debates connecting these two stars. The discussion grew even larger when attention shifted toward Clark's enormous rise in popularity. As television ratings continued climbing and sold-out arenas followed her across the country, Wilson made additional comments that centered on race and privilege. Those statements created another wave of headlines and divided basketball fans into opposing camps. Some agreed with Wilson's perspective, while others believed Clark's popularity was primarily driven by her record-breaking performances and exciting style of play. Regardless of which side people supported, one thing became obvious. Caitlin Clark was transforming women's basketball into a national conversation unlike anything the sport had experienced in years. Television audiences reached historic levels, arenas filled wherever she played, and media coverage expanded far beyond traditional basketball circles. That surge in attention also meant every comment involving Clark received enormous scrutiny, including Wilson's interviews. As more fans revisited those older clips, they began asking whether these moments were isolated opinions or the beginning of a much bigger storyline that would eventually carry into the WNBA. As Caitlin Clark's popularity continued to explode, the conversation surrounding her shifted from basketball statistics to something much bigger. Every game seemed to break another attendance record. Television ratings continued climbing, and sports media couldn't stop talking about her impact. Whether people loved her or criticized her, Clark had become the center of attention, and every public comment about her carried far more weight than it normally would. One of the biggest talking points came after Wilson discussed Clark's rise by referencing privilege and race. Those remarks immediately spread across social media, with thousands of fans debating exactly what she meant. Some believe Wilson was highlighting broader issues surrounding media coverage in women's basketball, while others felt the comments unfairly dismissed everything Clark had accomplished on the court. The debate quickly expanded beyond basketball and became one of the most discussed stories surrounding the sport that season. Meanwhile, Clark's performances continued speaking for themselves. She wasn't simply putting up impressive numbers. She was changing the business of women's basketball. Road arenas sold out weeks in advance whenever Iowa appeared. Television audiences reached levels rarely seen in the college game, and analysts repeatedly pointed to Clark as one of the biggest reasons women's basketball was attracting millions of new viewers. Those achievements fueled another argument among fans, who believed her popularity reflected both elite talent and unprecedented entertainment value. What made the discussion even more interesting was how other established stars reacted. According to the source material, several prominent figures publicly praised Clark's influence on the game rather than criticizing it. That contrast caused many fans to compare Wilson's comments with the responses of other players and analysts, leading some people to conclude that Wilson's perspective stood out from much of the basketball community. Whether that interpretation was fair became another major topic online, creating countless debates across sports shows, podcasts, and comment sections. The conversation didn't slow down after Clark entered the WNBA. Instead, it shifted toward endorsements, sponsorships, and the financial impact she was having almost immediately. Long before Clark played a full professional season, she had already signed one of the largest endorsement agreements in league history. That achievement sparked fresh comparisons with veteran stars, especially when discussions turned towards signature shoes and marketing opportunities. Fans began asking whether Clark's popularity was changing the business side of women's basketball faster than anyone expected. During this period, Wilson publicly expressed that the league's best players deserved signature shoes and greater recognition. Those comments generated another wave of headlines because many people connected them with Clark's historic endorsement deal. Some interpreted Wilson's remarks as a broader conversation about veteran recognition, while others believed they reflected frustration over the financial attention Clark was receiving as a rookie. Whatever the intention, the timing ensured the debate continued dominating basketball news cycles. By this point, the rivalry had evolved far beyond wins and losses. Fans were no longer discussing only points, rebounds, or championships. Instead, conversations centered on endorsements, popularity, media attention, and the future of the WNBA itself. Every interview, every quote, and every business announcement involving either player became headline material, setting the stage for an even bigger controversy that would emerge through podcast appearances, public reactions, and the league's rapidly changing landscape. As Caitlin Clark's popularity continued rising, the discussion expanded far beyond basketball. It was no longer just about points, assists, or championship aspirations. The focus shifted toward endorsements, sponsorships, and the business side of women's sports. Every new deal Clark signed became national news, and many fans believed her influence was changing the financial future of the WNBA faster than anyone had expected. That rapid growth naturally created comparisons between the league's biggest established stars and its newest superstar. One of the biggest talking points involved Clark's historic Nike agreement. According to the source material, her contract became the largest shoe deal in WNBA history, immediately drawing attention throughout the basketball world. Around the same time, Wilson discussed the importance of elite players receiving signature shoes and greater recognition. Those comments quickly became linked to Clark's announcement, even though Wilson already had her own signature shoe in development. Fans interpreted the situation in very different ways, with some defending Wilson's position, while others believed the timing fueled unnecessary comparisons. The debate only intensified after Clark received major recognition away from the court. When she earned high-profile awards and continued dominating headlines, Wilson again spoke about the challenges black women face in receiving equal recognition. Those remarks reignited the same discussions that had followed earlier interviews. Supporters viewed her comments as part of a larger conversation about representation in sports, while critics argued that Clark's achievements were being overlooked in favor of broader narratives. Once again, basketball fans found themselves divided across social media and television debates. Meanwhile, Clark's commercial success kept reaching new levels. The source material points to speaking engagements, endorsement earnings, and national rankings as further examples of a growing influence beyond basketball. Every new business milestone generated headlines, reinforcing the idea that Clark had become one of the most marketable athletes in the country. Those accomplishments weren't limited to the basketball community. They attracted attention from major brands, corporate events, and mainstream media outlets, further increasing her visibility. As those business numbers continued climbing, comparisons between Clark and Wilson became even more frequent. Fans, analysts, and commentators debated whether the league's newest star had already become its biggest financial draw. Every endorsement announcement, sponsorship deal, and appearance fee seemed to spark another round of discussions online. Rather than fading, the rivalry narrative continued growing because nearly every headline involving one player was immediately compared with the other. Then another moment reignited the controversy. During a podcast appearance with former NBA players, Wilson participated in a conversation about the physical nature of basketball and how players compete against different opponents. Clips from that discussion quickly spread across social media, with many viewers interpreting parts of the conversation as confirmation of opinions they had already formed about the rivalry. Others argued the remarks were casual locker room talk taken out of context. Regardless of interpretation, the interview once again placed Wilson and Clark at the center of basketball headlines and set up the final chapter of this ongoing story. The controversy reached another level after a podcast appearance featuring A'ja Wilson alongside former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. During the conversation, the host discussed the physical nature of basketball and referenced the attention surrounding Caitlin Clark. Wilson laughed along as the discussion turned toward what some players described as an unwritten rule about competing against certain opponents. Once clips from that interview appeared online, fans immediately connected the comments to the ongoing debate surrounding Clark's treatment on the court. For many viewers, those remarks became one of the biggest talking points of the season. Supporters argue the conversation was simply experienced players joking about the competitive mindset that exists at every level of basketball. Others believe the comments reinforced earlier interviews involving Wilson and fit into a pattern they had already identified. Because the podcast was informal rather than a traditional press conference, opinions differed sharply over whether the statements reflected serious beliefs or casual locker room storytelling. The debate intensified as fans revisited several physical plays involving Clark during her rookie season. According to the source material, those incidents led to increased public discussion and even calls for greater attention from league officials. As old interviews, podcast clips, and game footage were shared together across social media, many supporters attempted to connect separate events into a single narrative. Others argued there wasn't enough evidence to draw those conclusions and warned against reading too much into isolated moments. Away from the court, Clark's business success continued accelerating. The source material highlights her endorsement earnings, growing national profile, and expanding influence in sports marketing. Signature shoes, corporate partnerships, speaking engagements, and media appearances all reinforce the idea that Clark had become one of the most recognizable athletes in America. As her popularity increased, comparisons with every other WNBA star became unavoidable, especially regarding marketing opportunities and commercial success. At the same time, Wilson remained one of the league's most accomplished players, with MVP awards, championships, and defensive accolades already establishing her legacy on the court. Yet much of the public conversation shifted away from basketball achievements and toward branding, endorsements, and media attention. That contrast fueled even more debate among fans, with some believing basketball excellence should remain the primary focus, while others argue popularity and business impact naturally shape the modern sports landscape. Ultimately, this entire story reflects more than just a rivalry between two elite players. It represents the intersection of competition, media attention, business, and the rapid growth of women's basketball. Every interview, endorsement, award, and viral clip now reaches millions of people almost instantly, making every public comment part of a much larger conversation. Whether fans side with A'ja Wilson, Caitlin Clark, or neither player at all, one thing is undeniable. Their names continue driving some of the biggest discussions in basketball today. And as the WNBA continues expanding, this rivalry, real or perceived, will likely remain one of the league's most closely watched storylines for years come.